For most of my life, I was told that I was a natural leader. However, I never really quite understood what that meant. Was I a leader because I was the best player on a team or the captain of the team? Was I a leader because I was the loudest voice in a room? Or was I a leader because I was eager to please and I always raised my hand? As I grew into adulthood, my definition of a leader began to take shape. I thought it was the person who was out in front leading the charge, someone who was willing to take charge in a crisis or take over when no one else was willing. This led to some great opportunities and experiences for me, but it also led to some unhealthy emotions for me as a person. I was developing a temper, and I was developing a habit of avoiding some of the most important areas in my life, specifically my family. Hi, I'm Jim Shoplin, an award-winning professional leadership and business coach, and I'm here today to talk to you about Lead with Your Heart. Are you a leader? Leadership is a process of influence. Ken Blanchard puts it this way: when you influence the thinking, behavior, or development of people towards accomplishing goals, either personal or professional, you're taking on the role of a leader. So, would you describe these roles as leaders? A mother or a father with a child? How about a friend who helps out another one through a tough experience? Or a teacher who shapes the minds of their young students? Or how about a coach who has to challenge their star player because they broke the rules? When you consider these roles, most of the leadership that shapes our lives does not come from leaders with roles and titles in organizational charts. It comes from leaders that are in our daily life relationships. I started to take leadership seriously about 10 years ago, and I decided to learn more about what it makes and what it takes to be a good leader. Leadership, and specifically applying leadership skills, has become a passion of mine. I wanted to understand my emotions of anger and avoidance, and I wanted to learn how to pass on my leadership skills to help others develop them. Up until this time, all of my examples of leadership were of people's actions or behaviors, and I was basing my own actions on these examples, but there seemed to be something missing. Most of today's current wisdom emphasizes spending time on changing our actions or our habits, but if our heart is not in the right place, we're not going to have the desired outcome. I may have had the talent to lead, but before I could truly become a strong leader, I needed to understand more about my character. I needed to get my heart right. I discovered that true leadership comes when we lead from the heart. When we shift our focus from what's in it for me, which is a self-focused leader, to what can I do to help you, which is leading with the heart. We become leaders with much more of an impact when we lead from the heart. So how do we determine what type of leader we are? Well, there's 3 patterns to examine in our character and the difference between a self-focused leader and when we're leading from the heart. First of all, feedback. Ask yourself, how do you handle negative feedback? Do you consider it a threat, or do you get defensive about it? This was a hot topic for me. I mean, I'm a proudful person. I want to be in control. I don't ask people for directions, let alone how am I going to ask people to give me feedback on something. This at the time was beyond me. But I've joined some groups that have helped me to understand the importance of getting feedback. I want to surround myself with others that I can trust, that would provide me with feedback on my leadership and on other skills that I want to improve. So as I began my leadership journey, I realized that it was important for me to get some feedback. Secondly is, how do you handle or think about succession? So how do you handle succession planning? Like, do you prepare others to take your place? And think about, what have you left behind in the hearts and minds of others that you've taught or worked with? Up until I started taking leadership seriously, it was all about me. My leadership role was self-centered. It was not about building others up, and it was certainly not about developing other leaders. I had used all of my leadership experience on what I had learned in an organizational role, and I was trying to implement this at home and in my life role. Like, try to come at home and telling the kids what to do because, well, I do that at the office, and as a manager, I have a certain amount of authority over people, so they do it. Kids don't listen quite the same way, and our family was very different when I tried to lead in that way. However, when we shift our focus to building others up, we shift our heart, and it changes our character. And finally, the third trait to look at when you're considering about what type of leadership style you have is, what is your perspective on those that you lead or that follow you? Do you just expect others to follow? Or do you respect the wishes of those that you have entrusted with your responsibility of leading? I view myself as having all the answers. That was always me. I was never inclusive. I wanted to do it on my own. And this would stress me out. However, when I shifted my focus to leading others, this totally changed where my heart was at. Let me give you an example. The average person walks at about 3 miles per hour. But if I'm out there leading at 6 or 7 miles an hour, I'm way ahead of the pack. I haven't considered where most people are that I'm leading. I need to step back and consider, where are the people that are following me, those that I'm leading, and where are they at? How can I be inclusive and bring them along in the ride? Now listen, we're all leaders, and we're all responsible in some way to prepare others for their journey ahead. John Maxwell says it really good when he says, leaders must experience personal change before they can implement public change. I had been doing it all backwards. So consider this. Leadership is when you take your role to influence the thinking, behavior, or development of a person to accomplish a goal. So be open to feedback. Look for opportunities to replace yourself as a leader and walk alongside those that you lead. When we consider the roles that I mentioned earlier, such as a mother or a father, or a friend or a teacher or a coach, these leaders shape our lives with their leadership skills. Now, how would you answer the question? Are you a leader? Ask yourself this question whenever that is proposed. Just say, what can I do to help? So when I go back into those first questions that I asked about, was I a leader because I was just the loudest person or the best player on a team? I consider at the time, was my heart into it or not? In many of those situations it was, but I just wasn't aware of it. But unfortunately, in many there wasn't. So when you consider this, lead from your heart in all areas of leadership. They're going to fall into place for you. And it will ensure that you're impacting the lives of those around you to live out their best life.